Hey guys, just a heads up that there's a lot of space over on this side. If anybody's feeling a little cramped, there's also space up in the front. Again, there's a lot of space over on my stage right over here, so feel free to move around.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. We'll give you about 30 seconds to finish these fantastic conversations that you're having. And this is occurring throughout the district. So even though I have a great group in front of me, I know that I'm also speaking to many of our fellow colleagues throughout the district. So we'll give you about another 20 seconds to finish up these great conversations. Good morning, Fairport. Thank you once again for being together. This morning we are here to hear an incredible, relevant speaker, Kara Jusek, from Tree Hope Counseling. You'll find that her message will be right on point. But before we get there, I got to say some things that's on my mind. And it starts with, have you ever thought of yourself as being courageous? The very definition of courage is to go forward, to move forward in the face of adversity, uncertainty, going forward even when you're afraid. And that's what you have done. You came together collectively, and that word is very important, collectively. And you have demonstrated incredible courage. And for that, I am grateful. And what happens with courage, it becomes exponential, because as we're together, as we're with each other in our space, sharing space, it becomes an exponential factor. It breeds, it grows. And that's the essence of today. We want to continue to build upon the courage, the foundation, the hope that we have. But even more so, we want you to take care of yourselves, and we want you to take care of each other. And we will be giving you the gift of time today. This message is incredibly important, because hopefully we can come away with some pearls of wisdom to move forward, because the concept of sustainability is also on my mind. It's October, and we need to continue to find ways to muster the courage together, collaborate, work smarter, work together, work in a way that fosters sustainability. And I also have to say this, I'm a dad, and it's working. I have a kid who doesn't want to be at home. He wants to be at school every single day. I have another kid, I won't tell you which one, all right? Is finding himself productive and engaged. We're grateful as parents that you are engaging our children. I know that our families are incredibly grateful for your efforts and the courage. Don't forget to think of yourself as being courageous. You're moving forward in uncertainty. You're moving forward when the world is spinning in many different directions. Pick an issue. There's many of them in 2020, and I'm grateful for it. I'm also grateful for Deborah Miles, who is our Director of Student Services, and everything mental health and wellness. The leadership that she brings forward is indicative of the many different initiatives that we have in our school district, and she will introduce our very guest and important speaker, Deborah Miles.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you. Thanks for coming and being here. So Kara Jusek is a licensed clinical social worker, certified compassion fatigue professional, and co-owner of Tree of Hope Counseling. Kara's clinical practice specializes in trauma, grief and loss, chronic and critical illness, and anxiety. She's a frequent presenter to educators across the county on topics of self-care, mindfulness, and compassion fatigue. Kara was recognized as one of Rochester's 40 under 40 leaders last year. And since March, Kara has juggled the increased mental health demands of our community in business and practice, offering supportive and educational sessions for professionals and managing a busy at-home school schedule with her 2 sons, as we can relate to. So Kara, thank you for coming. We've had Kara here before with our mental health department doing a presentation on compassion fatigue. So we welcome you back, and we're looking forward to this presentation. I think the title says everything in terms of how we're feeling today. So without further delay, welcome to Fairport.
I suppose if I'm up here by myself, I can take off my mask, right? Welcome. Thank you for including me in your first kind of, breather of the school year. And I'm privileged. Thank you, Deb and Brett, for letting me be part of starting off your day and giving this message, which Brett set up so well. So I'm hopeful I can give you a few things to think about, a few things to take with you, so that you can continue to be resilient as we kind of march along together here. So as Deb said, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm also a mom of 2 kids, and I'm also the wife of an elementary school principal. So I've been experiencing this from all angles, and so I'm passionate about giving back to educators as a parent and as a wife of one. So I'm excited to kind of offer you some of that different perspective. So you see the title, Are We Going to Be Okay? I just wanted to be real with you, right? That's a question. I think we're all asking that. How long can we do this? What is this going to look like? Am I going to be okay? Are my kids going to be okay? Are we collectively going to be okay? And so self-care during this time of chronic stress, I just want to kind of preview that self-care, if you think about it, right? What worked for you in February, you may not have been able to continue to use as a self-care strategy. And so part of what I'm hoping to offer you today is some different ways of thinking about self-care, because even from March until now, maybe being home, working from home in the spring, you were able to try some different strategies. Maybe those aren't available to you either now. So part of what I'm hoping to show you is, on a mental, cognitive, and emotional level, how do we shift so that we feel better? We feel more resilient. We feel like we can continue to do this really important work. So I'm going to challenge you to think about self-care a little bit differently today. I always like to throw this up. This is my group practice that I own, and I put this out there partly because I want you to recognize the logo, and I want you to know what we do, but I also want you to know that we're here for you. We're here for you as parents, for you as educators, for your families, and for the people, the families and the students that you work with. There's 38 of us. We just added someone, so there's a lot of us, and there's a lot of great work going on. So a lot of times when I present on topics like this, people leave with the feeling of, wow, I need to talk through more of this, or I need some more support with this. So we're here for you. Keep us in mind if you need anything. All right, here's what I'm hoping we'll move through today. I want to give you a sense of what is this collective chronic stress. I don't have to tell you what stress is, but this experience of collective chronic stress will kind of define, so really validate that this is where we're at. As Deb said, I've talked about compassion fatigue before. We'll kind of put that into context. That's a big piece of this stress experience. Self-compassion. I feel like I need to spend a little time on this because it gets lost when we're feeling overwhelmed. We're not very nice to ourselves. We have lots of expectations and judgments, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then I'll give you some skills for being okay, and I put that in quotations because we're not really going to be okay with everything, right? But it's kind of finding our way to how do we be resilient? How do we keep doing this? So, and then it only makes sense that if we're talking about collective stress, that we also understand, what does collective healing look like? What can we do? What do we have control over? How can we come together and help each other out, take care of each other? All right, so again, I don't need to define stress for you, but it's a good place to start, right? This is a strain, tension, that's a result of demands that are on us, right? And so what I want to add to this definition is what our brain's doing. This is important because our brains are on overdrive. So the brain's saying when we're under some type of stress, this situation feels threatening. It feels uncomfortable. And I need a plan for survival. That's the amygdala. The amygdala is saying, whoa, I need to do something about this because I'm worried about my safety, right? And I mean emotional safety, not always physical safety. So this is kind of just your basic kind of day-to-day stress, but now we add on the chronic piece. So adding on to that definition, over a prolonged period of time. Now we're getting tired, getting exhausted, and so is the brain. The brain's saying, wow, this has been going on for too long, right? And so being on high alert all the time, right, waiting, not knowing, the uncertainty is really overwhelming and exhausting. But I got to keep pushing along. So that's what's going on in your brain. It's on overdrive. And we don't have a break to allow kind of the recovery process, right? So some more biology for you, right? Our adrenal glands are really working hard to kind of pump that cortisol so we can come down from those stressful moments. But with chronic stress, we don't really come down. It's just an elevated kind of experience, and I know you can all relate to that. So let's add one more piece. Now we have this collective chronic experience. So not only is it, a strain or tension and demands over a prolonged period of time, but now also shared with each other. We're seeing it in each other. And maybe not just the people that we work with, but our families and our community. We're seeing it on the news. We're seeing it as a culture. And so that has even more of an impact. So there's these layers, right? And so now the brain is saying, I'm exhausted, just trying to survive. And no one seems to have the answers. Everyone's, this phrase of we're all in this together, it's bittersweet, right? There's a little bit of comfort in thinking that we're all kind of feeling the similar stressors. But at the same time, if we're all in this together, then who's got the answers? And that's hard to hold, right? Because someone's got to lead the way. And so this collective nature is not always just comforting. Brett mentioned uncertainty. This is a big piece, another layer of how stress feels, right? So we're missing information. There's unanswered questions. Not just, thinking about what information or what shifts happened in March, but just reopening school, right? There's still things we're learning every day. And I say this from my husband coming home and processing with me about, gosh, we thought we had this kind of figured out. And now there's something that we couldn't have even anticipated that we have to respond to now. So this kind of everyday, what's next kind of feeling, and uncertainty is that kind of automatic we respond with anxiety. We want to know, I'm a planner. I like to know what's coming next, right? Many of us are like that. And during the last 7 months, that doesn't bode well. That doesn't feel good to those of us that like to have things, we like to be able to see where we're headed. And not being able to do that and having to sit in a really vulnerable space adds to our experience, right? So I'm trying to paint this picture of how complex this is, partly to hopefully not stressing you out more this morning, but really validating your experience and why this feels the way that it does. It's no wonder we have collective chronic stress. So I like this quote because it really connects this idea of uncertainty and the discomfort of that with this idea of control, right? And I'm sure you've thought about this before, talked about this before. Uncertainty is life's way of saying that there are only a few things you can control. So I won't, I guess thinking about what's in my control and out of my control, I'm sure you've thought a bit about that. But really, I want you to think about what would it be like to kind of release those things that are way above and beyond what I can do today. And really then, the other piece is really engaging. Okay, this is something I can make a choice about, so I'm going to really dig into that. I'm going to be active in that. I'm going to really engage in that and take charge of what I can control. So there's two pieces there. It's not just I need to know which is which, but I actually then have to do something with those things that I can control, the things I have choices about, and really be intentional about that. So, compassion fatigue. This, I'll just give you kind of a quick definition, and then we'll kind of bring it into context here. So, compassion fatigue is this exhaustion that we feel when we see other people struggling. And you guys, I consider you all, including me, to be professional caregivers. Maybe you've never thought of yourself that way, but that's what you do. When I send my kids to school, I expect you to be caring for them, right? But in a very professional role. So being a professional caregiver means that you're not just teaching my kids, you're connecting with my kids, you're caring for my kids, you're having an emotional exchange with my children. And so when we start to do that and we feel this emotional connection, then there's empathy, then there's all of these feelings that we start to use to relate to the people that we're working with, families as well. And so that becomes exhausting. All that compassion, putting all that compassion out there can be exhausting. And so during uncertain times, it's even heavier, right? So now we're trying to connect with people that are struggling, and maybe it's just academically. Even if we weren't in the circumstances that we are now, even just trying to connect with kids that might struggle emotionally and academically under typical circumstances, but add on the fact that we all, entered into day one with lots of questions and worries. And so having you manage that during uncertainty and witnessing, gosh, these kids are having their own experience of this. We might have the urge, a lot of times we have the urge to just fix that, right? Unfortunately, with uncertainty, we can't quite fix. But I know when I look at my own kids, I just want to make it better for them, right? I just don't want to see them worry and struggle. And so with that instinct, we're going to find ourselves kind of in this cycle, right? Because we can't take a lot of this away. And so instead, that discomfort that we feel means that we're actually in the right place. We're actually struggling with the right stuff, if you can relate to that. So this discomfort I want to frame as not an emergency. The vulnerability, the discomfort, it's not an emergency. It's not always a crisis. It's just uncomfortable. It's new. It's different. It's the first time we've all done this. And so this will come back when I talk about kind of how do we think about ourselves and how we're doing right now, because I think we have expectations that we're going to figure this out. I've been teaching for how many years? And having to reframe that, the discomfort is big. But it's not a crisis. It just means that we're struggling with the right stuff. It's totally necessary for us to be resilient. We have to move through discomfort in order to come out with insight and to be resilient in the long run. So I put this yoga pose up here to show you what discomfort might look like, and encourage you to actually get comfortable being uncomfortable. And I know that sounds weird. I talk a lot about that in my office. Really kind of acknowledging and accepting that discomfort's okay, and it doesn't mean that I'm not a good parent. It just means I may have to move through this. So self-compassion, I wanted to make sure I spent a moment talking about, because a lot of what I hear from my husband, a lot of what I hear in my own mind is, are we doing this right? Like, am I doing, what is right? What does that mean? And so we do a lot of measuring and judging, and we're not very nice to ourselves. I say to people, gosh, would you ever say what you say to yourself? Would you say that to a friend? No way. We have a way of judging ourselves and putting unrealistic expectations on ourselves that really is not kind at all. And so coming back and acknowledging vulnerability and discomfort and being able to say, you know what, I'm doing okay. I'm doing the best that I can. And seeing yourself in the situation and having some compassion for the struggle that is our current reality. And so I think of self-compassion as a combination of being kind, also seeing ourselves as part of something bigger, right? It's not just me. And also being mindful, so being aware of what's going on around you, being able to step back and see, well, no wonder it feels heavy. No wonder it feels like I have a lot going on. This is real. This is actually tough. And I also say on the top there, being gentle. That's another way to think about this. And this is a message too for those of you in front of me here with the adolescents that you work with. An important message for them to hear as well, right? Be nice, be kind to yourself. We're all learning together along the way. You've never done this before. So let's all be kind to ourselves. All right, some of the skills for being okay. I split this up into two sections. Cognitive messaging. So this is that inner voice, that inner dialogue. What you say to yourself, how you see yourself, how you judge yourself. We'll talk about shifting some of that messaging. And then interpersonally, how are you relating to others when you're stressed? And your expectations of others, what you need from others. This is different than thinking about what might have worked under typical circumstances back in January or February. You may have found that, okay, my self-care is I go to a yoga class after work. That's not available to everyone right now. So I'm challenging you to think about, how can I take care of my mind and my emotions and my relationships? Because those are the pieces that are still part of my experience. I may not have access to even taking a walk. That used to be my thing, but now my kids are home 3 days a week, and so me and my youngest is 9, and I don't trust my 9 and 12-year-old to be home together, even to go out for a walk. So I don't have access to that, during the day like I used to. So instead of being really upset about that or frustrated with that, I need to look differently at self-care. I need to be creative. It's a lot of what I spend time on with people in my office is kind of reframing, what does it mean to take care of yourself? And I see that happening on a very cognitive level, and also really preserving our relationships so that we continue to feel that connection. All of this helping us be more resilient. All right, so our cognitive messaging, there's a few pieces here. Acknowledgement. This is just the idea of like seeing things for what they are, right? So this is kind of the opposite of denial, right? And I think there's probably points that you found yourself like, this is not happening. This can't be happening. This can't be the reality. And I think as soon as we say, I see it for what it is, even if I don't like it, I see it for what it is. So now I can move forward because I'm actually connecting with where I am. And so that's an important cognitive piece because if we're stuck in kind of denial or we're feeling really negative about what's in front of us, we're not going to be able to move through. Reframing. I have a poem for you. I'm going to step out and then I'll step back into the... So related to reframing and perspective, I have a little poem, Don't Be a Cookie Thief. A woman was waiting at an airport one night with several long hours before her flight. She hunted for a book in the airport shop, bought a bag of cookies, and found a place to drop. She was engrossed in her book, but happened to see that the man beside her, as bold as could be, grabbed a cookie or two from the bag between, which she tried to ignore to avoid a scene. She munched cookies and watched the clock as this gusty cookie thief diminished her stock. She was getting more irritated as the minutes ticked by, thinking, if I wasn't so nice, I'd blacken his eye. With each cookie she took, he took one too. And when only one was left, she wondered what he'd do. With a smile on his face and a nervous laugh, he took the last cookie and broke it in half. He offered her half as he ate the other. She snatched it from him and thought, oh, brother, this guy has some nerve, and he's also rude. Why, he didn't even show any gratitude. She had never known when she had been so galled and sighed with relief when her flight was called. She gathered her belongings and headed for the gate, refusing to look back at the thieving ingrate. She boarded the plane and sank in her seat, then sought the book, which was almost complete. As she reached in her baggage, she gasped in surprise. There was her bag of cookies in front of her eyes. If mine are here, she moaned with despair, then the others were his, and he tried to share. Too late to apologize, she realized with grief that she was the rude one, the ingrate, the thief. So I share that with you as a kind of a demonstration of how we see things. Our perspective shapes what we think, how we feel, and how we act. Right? Makes sense. And so to see it play out and to see how much energy she spent feeling a certain way because of how she saw the situation it's a really important thing for us to be thinking about, and it's one thing that we have control over right now. We can control how we see things, and so sometimes we need to step back when we're feeling kind of stuck, and it's hard to imagine something different, and it's hard to shift the way that we do our work. Stepping back, seeing things from a different angle, allows us to feel and think and act differently. Maybe even learn something new. Positive affirmations. Again, this may sound like, basic, but remember, we don't say a lot of nice things to ourselves. And so something like positive affirmations, having actual statements that we say, and this can extend to your classroom. I do this with my own children. This idea of just saying things out loud that make us feel good, that give us some hope, that give us some, putting things into words like, we can do this, right? Even something as simple as that. How often do you actually say that out loud, right? So the act of saying something positive, having to kind of translate that thought into words and then sharing that with other people is really powerful. And so I call them affirmations because the more we say these things, the more we believe, okay, all right, we can do this, right? And so giving yourself positive messages and also sharing those with others is a huge shift. And sometimes we get away from that because we're trying to just push through and get done what we need to get done. And slowing down and really connecting with positivity and having that be part of your day, part of your experience, and part of your relationships, huge. And this is where we start to shift away from, we can't hold both a negative thought, I can't do this, and I can do this. right? We've got to kind of pick one or the other. So when we have choice to say, all right, I may not believe it 100% today, but I'm gonna walk in with the positive thought that we can do this. We can do this together. I believe that we can. Those kinds of thoughts. Or it might even be, I'm doing the best that I can. Right? As a mom, that is really hard for me to say, especially when I'm finding myself in a new role of juggling in a way that I've never juggled before. I realize that this is why I would not choose to be, or I did not choose to be an at-home mom. And so I will question a lot, am I doing everything that I can? Am I working too much? Am I spending enough time helping my kids? And so just me saying, I'm doing the best that I can. It's hard to say, but I might start to believe that, and I might feel like I can make space for that if I can give myself that positive message. So that's another one of those cognitive pieces that we can shift and kind of give ourselves the gift of, let me try saying, kind of shifting some of those negative feelings about myself or the situation. Another basic one, hope. Right? I think when we're find ourselves in uncertainty, we're feeling vulnerable, our brain's on overdrive, it's hard to see past this moment. It's hard to see that things, this is where we are, and it could actually be okay. We could actually, find a way that we can make this feel okay for everyone. And so having hope about that, seeing beyond and being hopeful that we can still achieve certain, developmental pieces, that we can still connect with kids, even with the mask on. And I'll tell you, as a parent, and those of you that can relate to being parents, if teachers that spent time with my kids, if all they did was offer positive messages and instill hope in my kids, I don't care what they learn. Right? So hope is a really important part of getting through stressful times, especially collective chronic stress. So having a sense of hope and purpose about something, and really kind of making that part of your experience. Mindfulness, this is another topic that I do a lot of presenting on, so it makes its way into just about every presentation. But this idea of being just one thing at a time. For example, so I'm here this morning. I head back to my house. My kids are starting their virtual day today. And I'm going to walk into some supervision meetings. I supervise a few of my therapists. And then I have a session. And then I have a meeting with someone who wants to become a therapist in my group. So I'm doing an interview. And then I'm talking to a collaborator partner in the community about our relationship and how we can move forward. Now, if I hold all those pieces and I'm wearing all those hats at the same time, then I'm not here with you. Right? So this idea of I can only do one thing at a time if I want to do it well. Right? I could be thinking, what's that conversation going to be like later? And then that takes me away from this moment. So I won't be able to be present with you. And so simply reminding ourselves to take one thing at a time, because we can't hold it all. That's when it gets heavy. So I'll get through this class, and then I'll move on to the next class, because that's the only place I can be. And that's what you give to students, that's what you give to your colleagues, is showing up one thing at a time, one moment at a time. So now we're talking about relationships. And again, this is a way that we can take care of ourselves, is really preserving these important relationships and staying connected in certain ways. So let's talk about boundaries for a moment, right? I'm sure you've thought about this before. It's even more important right now that you have not just that you can set limits, but that you have an awareness of what your limits are. Mine have changed. Mine have changed since March. Mine have changed since the beginning of the school year. So being aware of maybe, we'll think about a couple different types of boundaries. I have to set some limits around how much I'm on social media, what stuff I'm looking at, what I'm reading, how it's making me feel. So there's an example, right? I have to know that limit. I have to really be aware of how it makes me feel so I can draw the line. And then I need to stick to it. Because boundaries the purpose of them is to really preserve so that I don't get way beyond, what's comfortable for me, and that I choose where the line is, and I protect myself, and then I also can protect my relationships. So one boundary might be, what information do I expose myself to, and where's my limit with that? And I would really encourage you to think about that. And maybe some of you already have. I know that's been one thing that people have felt like, okay, I'm in charge of how much information I'm going to seek and how I'm going to hold that information. Another boundary might be, the emotional boundary of how much we talk about the struggle part, right? How much time and energy we spend really processing the tougher parts of this, and how that makes us feel when that's where we spend all of our energy. And so again, drawing the line and saying, okay, I need to step back from this now. Sometimes my husband and I have to say to each other, all right, this is too much. I think we need to step back from this. And that's important to be able to verbalize and say, yep, I'm at my limit. And again, kind of preserving your own emotional experience. Another boundary might be your time, right? You all are taking on multiple full-time jobs right now just to make everything happen, which I totally appreciate as a parent. But being aware of how your time feels different now, your time and your energy, right? And really kind of having an awareness of how much time can I give, and where's my limit? And so revisiting some of these boundaries now that we are faced with different circumstances and different stressors. And then communicating those in some form, or asking for support in some form, and then sticking to them. All right, and so this kind of translates into your support system. And I think of this as like, who do you have in this room that is supportive to you, your colleagues that you might share information and share, students with, things like that. But I'm talking even more wide of a net. We may have to make some decisions right now about who's in and who's out. Who is actually supportive, whose relationships make me feel good, and whose relationships are creating more stress for me. And so we may have to shift where we seek support, who provides that support for us, and support may even look different, right? So I may not be able to see some of my friends, right? But I may still value the support or the connection that I get from them. So I may really have to think creatively about how to access that. Or I may need something different from my partner, or I may need something different from my parents. And so again, revisiting who do I need, and how do I express that I need some support from them, and then how do I support others? So a lot of these things we may have had in place or had a handle on back in the winter. And so it's kind of revisiting and making sure that these things are still meeting some of our emotional needs, and that we're really spending our time and energy on those really meaningful relationships while we're also kind of juggling all of these different pieces. In relationships, also kind of an openness as we're all learning and exploring all of this information that we're being faced with. In addition to the pandemic, we're learning a lot, and we're hearing a lot about social injustices and just our society and community as a whole. And so being open to learning new things and to making new connections, and this openness means that we're kind of making ourselves a little vulnerable, but also it allows us to kind of stretch our ability to understand each other and our community, because there's new levels of experiences that are important for us to be able to integrate in some way. So that openness, instead of kind of being like, I don't want to know anymore, I just can't know anymore, really kind of having an openness to, what does this mean for us? What does this mean for us as a staff? What does this mean for my family? And being willing to be open. And then empathy, again, not new to you, but may look different now. Being able to look at other people and say, wow, they're struggling too. We're not always quick to do that. Usually we're like, well, geez, she's late to work, or seems to really not be herself lately. But if we add on, she's struggling too. And we're all experiencing kind of this juggling act, and be able to kind of do that without judgment, and be able to kind of see the human experience that we're all connected to. And so this empathy piece, I think that's what contributes to some of our compassion fatigue, right? So being careful about the empathy that we might, the level of empathy that we might be sharing with others. But it's really important that we feel that. That's a really powerful feeling that we get to give. It's actually a gift, I think, that we get to give to others, is being willing to connect and relate, and without judgment. So as I said, this idea of collective stress, we want to also think about collective healing, right? I don't want to leave you just feeling stressed as you walk out of here, but also thinking about what can we do for each other? What can we do as a community? And I think of a few different things, and part of me was thinking, as I kind of created what I wanted to say here, I was thinking a lot about my kids and what I want them to hear from you. And so I thought about, being a role model for others, so modeling some of these things that we talked about, modeling compassion, modeling empathy, and knowing how powerful that is. I think we underestimate the power of that. And like I said, if my kids came to you and learned and felt hopeful and learned to like themselves and learned that they're doing the best that they can, that's all I can ask for. So don't underestimate the power of that. And so modeling those skills, just as you would any academic skill, is really, really important. So don't lose touch of that. It also enhances the learning environment, right? It makes it more likely that kids are going to be willing to engage with you if they feel that sense of hope and empathy from you. It's not easy to find a sense of purpose right now, but this is important. As we think about healing our families, kind of a sense of healing in our community, is that we find some sense of purpose. This can look different for a lot of different people, right? For some people, it means going downtown and being an activist and standing with others in peaceful protest. Right? Some people find a sense of purpose in that. That's where they kind of connect with what's going on in the sense of collective healing. For others of us, maybe finding a sense of purpose is, for me, it's going into my virtual office every day and continuing to sit with the people that I serve, and continuing to hear their stories. That's what I consider my sense of purpose right now. Because as Deb said in my introduction, the increase in mental health needs over the last 7 months, great job security, but a lot of demand and a lot of need. And so me kind of continuing to be available is kind of my sense of purpose. And so finding some purpose, coming back to, like, why do I do this work? What do I love about this work? What's important about this work to me? That can bring us back to basics, something simple that makes this worth it, even when it looks different. So that can give us a real sense of resilience to kind of keep moving, because at the end of the day, I love what I do, and I care about these kids. And so that might help you find a sense of intention and purpose. And that kind of radiates, it kind of like translates out into the community when we all feel a little more purposeful. Gratitude, this is something I talk about probably every time I present. There's something about gratitude that requires us to slow down a little bit and really connect with what's okay, what's actually going okay. And again, hard to see right now. And hard to see when we're spending a lot of energy, shifting and adjusting. So slowing down enough to say to yourself, okay, so this was a really tough day, but that student really connected and engaged today, and I know Brett talked about gratitude at the very beginning. Being able to connect with that is so powerful. And I'll say it again: if my kids leave school and feel grateful for the connection with you, again, that's so important that we restore that. We find our way back to that during this time. And so gratitude can look a lot of different ways. It can be actually verbalizing. It can be slowing down enough to write an email to your colleague for something that they helped you with. Gratitude's also it feels good for the person that's expressing it, and it feels good for the person receiving it. It's kind of a win-win. And so slowing down enough to experience that can be really healing. And this is also kind of contagious in that it kind of translates out. So if someone slows down enough to say, hey, thanks for being available for that phone call, I'm going to feel that, and I may even be motivated to pass that along to someone else. And I may be like, wow, that felt really good. I've been meaning to express my gratitude to this person. And so we start to see this kind of extension of really connecting and slowing down enough to see that there are things that are going okay, and we lose sight of that. Teaching about community. So this this can be at home, in your classroom, really talking about the sense of community. What does community mean? And I'm sure this comes up kind of naturally in certain academic areas, but I think even as even just kind of acknowledging that, so my kids, their learning is asynchronous, synchronous when they're virtual, which is awesome. So they're able to see their classmates sitting in their desks, and their classmates are able to see them on the screen, and so that creates a sense of community. And one of my son's teachers talks about, here's, all of our classes here. So even when we're not connected physically, we can still think about a sense of community. It just feels a little bit different. But it's so important to preserve that sense of we are still a Fairport community. We are still a classroom community, even if it looks different and even if we're not all in the same place at the same time. And that kind of connects back to feeling hopeful, feeling purposeful. So however you can reinforce this sense of community also will benefit you, right? You might be thinking about, how do I help other people, whether it's my family or my students, but for you to also be the guiding force of that can really feel good for you as well. Loving kindness. So this concept, it's actually a type of meditation, but the concept is that we can kind of extend this sense of compassion and care to others, whether we know them or not. And so the purpose of this kind of meditation is that we can really kind of see ourselves as part of a larger humankind, and really extend a non-judgmental care and compassion for others. So we think about it as, if I can be compassionate to myself and kind to myself, then I can feel what that feels like and share that, whether mentally or emotionally or literally, with people that I know, and then even beyond to people that I don't know. The stranger that passes me in the grocery store and we're smiling through our masks, or the person, in another part of the country that I don't know personally. I can extend a sense of compassion toward them. And what that does for us is it really kind of feeds our heart and it reminds us that we're part of something bigger. And I think we forget that as well when we're caught up in our own day-to-day kind of struggles. And so all of these pieces are really meant to just remind us that there is this sense of collective healing, just like collective stress. And so to really kind of see those both as collective experiences and really kind of guide this sense of healing for the people, the kids and the families that you work with, for your own families, and then really for your own healing. And healing is not something that we start and we end. It's kind of a process. And so if we're engaged in this kind of hope for healing, then we're moving along. We're moving along. And so we can be stressed and kind of seeking and moving through healing as well. All right. What's my timing? Am I good? Okay, cool. So I'm ending with this image. Again, I like that the hands are connected, right? There's this sense of kind of coming together, connectedness, and there's a light, there's a hope coming through. And so to wrap up, I wanted to kind of bring all of you together, far and wide, at all the locations that everyone's sitting at, and really give you an opportunity to be in the same moment at the same time. And so we can do that by kind of coming back to something that is always occurring in us, which is our breath, and really kind of share in that experience and talking about kind of collective healing and kind of coming together. I wanted to try something and see if we can get all the locations that are tuning in and all of you that are in front of me to kind of breathe together. I know that sounds a little weird, but the energy and the feeling of kind of like, hey, even if we're not sitting together, we're all in this together. And so there's a need to kind of find that connection. We're all seeking that. We're all longing for that. It looks different than it did before. And so for just a few moments, I want to see if we can just kind of appreciate that far and wide, we're still connected. So if you're comfortable, kind of closing your eyes, my final gift to you. If not, no worries. And I just want you to kind of sit with yourself, sit with some of this information today. And wherever you're seated right now, I'm just going to guide you through 3 breaths together. And just kind of know that you're all following the same words from me. You're all engaged in the same moment at the same time. And so breathing in together and out. Breathing in and out. And one more, breathing in together and out together. Sitting with your own individual sense of relaxation as you kind of move into the other parts of your day, but also feeling the energy and the connection that we can find when we come to one moment at the same time together. Thank you for what you do. As a parent, I thank you. As the wife of an administrator, I thank you. I see you. I appreciate you. And I hope that you find some sense of purpose and healing as you move through this day, and that you enjoy your long weekend. And I hope you can pass along some of these pieces as you move through the rest of the day, knowing that, minus kids today, that you can maybe spend some time and energy, allowing some of these pieces to sit with you and sharing in some of the experiences today together. So thank you for having me as part of your day, and thank you for everything that you do. Thank you.